Good day. I welcome you all at the lecture on Fundamentals of Architecture and Town Planning of the subject Introduction to Civil Engineering, and the subject code is CEHS 302 and the related module number is 4. Myself Sandipan Saha, Assistant Professor for the Department of Civil Engineering of Greater Kolkata College of Engineering and Management under JIS Group. Let us first have a look on the topics that we are going to cover in this lecture. And those topics are aesthetics in civil engineering, examples of great architecture, fundamentals of architectural design and town planning, concept of LEED ratings, development of smart cities, various building systems like HVAC, acoustics, lighting, etc. Now let us proceed to the lecture. In our current lecture, we will mostly focus on the architecture and issues related to architectural concepts in construction. In architecture, aesthetic is an important aspect. So, what does the aesthetic mean? Basically, it is concerned with the beauty or the appreciation of beauty. The definition of aesthetic is being interested in how something looks and feels. An example of someone who is aesthetic might be an artist. Aesthetic means the pleasant, positive, or artful appearance of a person or a thing. An example of the word is aesthetic is to say that a particular car is beautiful. What does aesthetics mean in engineering? Aesthetics is the philosophical study of beauty and taste. The term stems from the Greek word aesthetikos, meaning of sense perception, and it is related to the study of sensory values. In design, aesthetics refers to the visual attractiveness of a product. It is often mistakenly associated with surface beauty rather than being defined as having to do with feelings. When aesthetics is understood as having to do with overall perceptions of quality, it becomes obvious that most engineering decisions affect the aesthetics of a product. So, we have understood what aesthetic means, but we need to understand how it is related to the construction as we are civil engineers. Basically, the aesthetics of a building is one of the principal aspects considered in architecture. The appeal of a building covers the combined effects of a building's shape, size, texture, color, balance, unity, movement, emphasis, contrast, symmetry, proportion, space, alignment, pattern, decoration, culture, and context. So, being a civil engineer, we need to have a clear idea of aesthetic construction. In view of this, we need to know what is aesthetic architecture. That means what is the relation between aesthetic and architecture. As we have already gone through that, aesthetics is the branch of philosophy that deals with the nature and expression of beauty. And how does it relate to architecture? Because architecture is a design process which involves planning, designing, creating, erecting, constructing, and executing construction of various types of spaces that are functionally efficient, economical, and aesthetically pleasing. So, now we know that principles of architecture are used to make a structure aesthetic. That means beautiful. So, how can a structure be used for aesthetic purpose? And the answer is, a structure should have a pure, clear, preferably simple form and bring a feeling of stability. Its form should also correspond with the materials used. Some guidelines for aesthetic structures are presented with respect to proportions, order, refinement of form, integration into the environment, and color. So in order to make a structure aesthetic, we need to apply these guidelines. That means we should follow these guidelines to make a structure or to use a structure for aesthetic purpose. So, what are the aesthetic considerations we should apply in architecture for the construction of a structure, or what we should consider in architecture for the construction of a aesthetic structure? So the aesthetic considerations are as follows. They are line, shape, size, texture, color, balance, unity, movement, emphasis or contrast, symmetry, space, alignment, culture, context. An architect should follow these aesthetic considerations for the construction of new structures to make it more beautiful or aesthetic. So we can understand that aesthetic is an integral issue in architectural process for constructing structures. Being a civil engineer, our job is not only to make a structure functional and serviceable, but also we should consider the aesthetic aspects of the structure. Now, let us have a look into some examples where you can see the application of aesthetics in the architecture of a structure. Here is the Great Eiffel Tower, situated in Paris, France. It is constructed in 1889. The Eiffel Tower is one of the most famous structures in the world. It's named after the engineer Gustav Eiffel, who built it. And it was built as the entrance arch for the World Expo of 1889. The tower is 324 meters high. It is approximately high as much as an 81-story building. Having a great aesthetic aspect, today the tower attracts millions of visitors every year. Not only this, but we have some more examples to show which actually depicts the importance of aesthetics for a structure. The first one is the Burj Al Arab, which is situated in Dubai. It is built on an artificial island which is 280 meters away from the coast, and it is one of the most luxurious and fourth tallest hotel in the world. It is 321 meters high, and it represents one of the wonders of contemporary engineering. The building is designed by Tom Wright of famous WKK architects, and its shape emulates the shape of a sail of a ship. The second one is the famous Parthenon, which is situated in Athens of Greece. The most famous and the best preserved temple of ancient Greece, had a lot of influence on the architecture, art and aesthetics of the Western world. It was built in the 5th century BC, which is dedicated to the goddess Athena Parthenos, the patron of Athens. Its sculptures, ornaments and friezes are today considered the finest examples of classical Greek art. Its supervising architect, Phidias, is still known by name as one of the best sculptors and builders of the ancient times. The third one is the famous Sydney Opera House. It is one of the most famous opera houses in the world because of its building structure. It was designed by Danish architect Jørn Utzon, who was celebrated for the groundbreaking modern design. Sydney Opera House was opened in 1973, staging large theatrical productions. You can see the beautiful design and aesthetics of this Sydney house as shown in the picture. The next one is the famous Petronas Towers, that is the famous twin towers of Kuala Lumpur in Malaysia. These twin towers were the tallest buildings in the world in the period from 1998 to 2004 and still are the tallest twin buildings in the world. Their complex and super modern design actually initiated the construction of the postmodern Kuala Lumpur. The next one is the famous Flatiron Building of New York. This is a classic example of the groundbreaking triangular solution of early modern architecture. The Flatiron Building was designed by Mr. Daniel Burnham and completed in the year 1902. This New York landmark was the tallest building in the world at the time it was completed. The next one is the famous Leaning Tower of Pisa. The campanile of the Cathedral of Pisa, Tuscany, is world famous for its leaning position. Its construction started in the 12th century and it was completed in the second half of the 14th century, and it is an iconic building of the late Italian Romanesque style. The next one is the famous Taj Mahal, which was built by the famous Mughal Emperor Shah Jahan. He built the most fantastic and the most beautiful monument of love for his early deceased wife Mumtaz. The entire building is covered in white marble, as you can see from the picture, depicting architecturally the ideal vision of heaven. Constructed in the 17th century, it is located in Agra in the Indian region of Uttar Pradesh. The next one is the famous Hagia Sophia of Istanbul, a monumental church then turned as a mosque and today a museum. It's a singular testimony to the grandeur and the genius of famous Byzantine architecture. It was built in the 6th century AD during the reign of famous Emperor Justinian. So, from all of the examples that we have mentioned here shows that the aesthetic is an integral part of a structure and how important this is. And being a civil engineer, it should be our objective to make a structure not only functional and serviceable for a long time, but also we should put effort to make it aesthetically pleasant and beautiful. So basically we can say that the aesthetic is an important issue for the architectural concept and application. Therefore, it is very much important for a civil engineer to have a clear idea regarding the architectural application and concept of town planning, because a civil engineer is responsible for the execution of construction process. Now, let us have a look on the fundamentals of architecture and town planning. As you can see, giving beauty to buildings is architecture, and the fundamentals are enhancing the appearance of the building and maintaining the heritage of the building. In case of town planning and cities, the major fundamentals are planning the layout, planning the road, separating the commercial, residential, academic and industrial areas, planning the green belt, planning sewage disposal units, and planning water treatment plants and water storage units. So these are the major fundamentals of architecture and these are the major fundamentals of town planning. Now let us have some idea regarding town planning. So what is town planning? Town planning basically is an arrangement of various components or units of a town in such a way that the town as such attains the significance of a living organism. With the help of knowledge of town planning, helps in achieving the best possible advantages of the situation of town with respect to its land and the surrounding environments. The town planning is a science as well as art too, and this art lies in arranging the components of a town in such a way that the final result is in the form of a beautiful, convenient, economical and efficient unit. So from this discussion, we can understand that why town planning is important. It is important because planning looks at the needs of people and the environment whilst respecting limits to development. Urban planning must recognize the regional limits to development in order to maintain natural habitats and biodiversity, which is so important to our continued existence. So, the objectives of town planning are, that means, what do we achieve by applying the principles of town planning? Those are beauty, convenience, environment, health. The first objective of town planning is to achieve beauty. And how do we achieve? The answer is the potential of the natural surroundings is exploited and the architectural finished are used to design various components of the town. The trees, natural greenery are preserved. Architectural control is imposed on the public as well as on the semi-public buildings, on the ancient architectural buildings, on temples, churches, mosques, on buildings of cultural and historical significance, etc. This is how we can achieve beauty by applying the principles of town planning. The second objective of town planning is to achieve convenience. And how do we achieve convenience? The answer is that various economic, social, and recreational amenities should be provided to the public. These amenities include cheap power and electricity, proper sites for dumping industrial wastes, facilities to commercial units, etc. Recreational spaces are very important to be designed and appropriately located. Places of recreation include open spaces, parks, town halls, playgrounds, cinema houses, community centers, stadiums, etc. And this is how we can achieve convenience by applying the principles of town planning. The third objective of town planning is to build a proper environment for the residents of the town. And how do we achieve this? The answer is that the towns should be designed in such a way that the environmental factors are taken into consideration. People living in the town should be able to carry on with their daily activities without putting much effort. The problems evolved with the rise in tiresome travel to work, long hours of work, limited time spent within the community, etc. In this regard, we should remember that these maladjustments have tended to destroy the vitality of urban living, and the town planning is mainly concerned with bringing about a better relation between man and his environment. The fourth and the last objective of town planning is to provide proper health to the citizens of the town and to maintain hygiene of the town. And how can we achieve this? The answer is that the health of the citizens should never be compromised. And to maintain this, the land of the town should be divided into zones such as residential, commercial, industrial, recreational, etc. And dividing the land into different zones prevents encroachment of one zone upon this smooth and promotes orderly development of the town in the near future. We have discussed the various objectives of town planning, and from this discussion it is clear that if we can achieve these objectives, then it will be very easy to implement the proper principles of town planning for constructing a new town or development of a town. So now the big question is why town planning is important. That means what are the necessities of town planning? The answer is to avoid certain evil situations within a town or a city. Evil situations means defective road system resulting in the formation of narrow streets and lanes, development of slums and squatter settlements, heavy traffic congestion during the working hours of the day, inadequate open spaces for parks and playgrounds resulting in unhealthy living conditions, lack of essential amenities like electricity, water supply, and drainage, noisy atmosphere disturbing the peace of city dwellers, uncontrolled development of the town, and unhealthy living conditions. So, to avoid these evil situations, a proper town planning is required. In view of the discussion regarding town planning, smart city is a very new concept. So basically, what is a smart city? The answer is there is no universally accepted definition of a smart city. It means different things to different people. The conceptualization of a smart city therefore varies from city to city and country to country, depending on the level of development, willingness to change and reform, resources, and aspirations of the city residents. A smart city would have a different connotation in India than, say, Europe. Even in India, there is no one way of defining a smart city. Some definitional boundaries are required to guide cities in the mission. In the imagination of any city dweller in India, the picture of a smart city contains a wish list of infrastructure and services that describes his or her level of aspiration. To provide for the aspirations and needs of the citizens, urban planners ideally aim at developing the entire urban ecosystem, which is represented by the four pillars of comprehensive development, that is, institutional, physical, social, and economic infrastructure. This can be a long-term goal, and cities can work towards developing such comprehensive infrastructure incrementally, adding on layers of smartness. In order to understand the definition of a smart city, we need to have an idea of its features. So, the smart city features are as follows. The first one is promoting mixed land use in area-based developments, that is, planning for unplanned areas containing a range of compatible activities and land uses close to one another in order to make land use more efficient. The states will enable some flexibility in land use and building bylaws to adapt the changes. The second one is housing and inclusiveness. That means expand housing opportunities for all. The third feature is creating walkable localities. That is, reduce congestion, air pollution, and resource depletion, boost local economy, promote interactions, and ensure security. The road network is created or refurbished not only for vehicles and public transport, but also for pedestrians and cyclists, and necessary administrative services are offered within walking or cycling distance. The next one is preserving and developing open spaces. That means parks, playgrounds, and recreational spaces in order to enhance the quality of life of citizens and reduce the urban heat effects in areas and generally promote eco-balance. The next important feature is promoting a variety of transport options. That means transit-oriented development, public transport, and last-mile paratransport connectivity. The next important feature is making governance citizen-friendly and cost-effective. That means increasingly rely on online services to bring about accountability and transparency, especially using mobiles to reduce cost of services and providing services without having to go to municipal offices, and forming e-groups to listen to people and obtain feedback and use online monitoring of programs and activities with the aid of cyber tour of work sites. The next important smart city feature is giving an identity to the city. That means based on its main economic activity such as local cuisine, health, education, arts and craft, culture, sports goods, furniture, hosiery, textile, dairy, etc. The last important feature of smart city is applying smart solutions to infrastructure and services in area-based development in order to make them better. For example, making areas less vulnerable to disasters, using fewer resources, and providing cheaper services. Now, let's have a look at the Smart City mission of India. Government of India plans to develop 100 smart cities by the end of 2020. The Smart City Mission will be operated as a centrally sponsored scheme, and the central government proposes to give financial support to the mission to the extent of rupees 48,000 crores over 5 years, that is on an average of rupees 100 crore per city per year. An equal amount on a matching basis will have to be contributed by the state. Therefore, nearly rupees 1 lakh crore of government funds will be available for the development of smart cities. In this map of India, you can see the locations of various smart cities that are currently under development. So you can see the smart cities are being developed in all over India. Construction of green building is the latest application of architectural concept. In this regard, LEED rating system is an important aspect. The leadership in energy and environmental design, that is LEED system, was designed by the United States Green Building Council to evaluate the influence of building design and construction on the environment. The LEED rating system has 7 areas of concentration, and those are sustainable sites, water efficiency, energy and atmosphere, materials and resources, indoor environmental quality, innovation in design process, and regional priority. Projects obtain credits in these areas to achieve certification. A building becomes certified after receiving a minimum of 40 credits from the USGBC. Here you can see the 7 categories which are considered for the LEED rating system. These are the 7 categories, and these are the maximum available points that can be achieved for each category. For sustainable sites category, the maximum available points that can be achieved is 26. For water efficiency category, the maximum available points that can be achieved is 10. For energy and atmosphere category, the maximum available point that can be achieved is 35. For materials and resources category, the maximum available points that can be achieved is 14. For indoor environmental quality, the maximum available points that can be achieved is 15. For innovation in design category, the maximum available points that can be achieved is 6. For regional priority category, the maximum available points that can be achieved is 4. So together, the maximum available points that can be achieved is 110. Basically, all of these categories are scrutinized very efficiently in order to certify a building as per LEED rating system. In this regard, one point should be remembered, that a building becomes LEED rating system certified only after receiving a minimum of 40 credit points from USGBC, that means from United States Green Building Council. After thoroughly evaluating all the categories, as mentioned earlier, if a building gets credits in between 40 and 49 points, then the building is certified as LEED certified. As I have already mentioned that the minimum points to be achieved is 40. If a building achieves a credit point between 50 and 59 points, then the building is certified as silver level from the LEED rating system. And if a building achieves a credit point in between 60 and 79 points, then the building is certified as gold level from the LEED rating system. Whereas in order to achieve platinum level certification, a building has to get 80 plus credit points from the LEED rating system. A building is awarded with any one of the certification level only after a thorough and detailed investigation of the all 7 categories associated with the LEED rating system. And detailed investigation of each category is very much important for the LEED rating certification of a building. Now let us have a look at the application of LEED rating system in India. Commencing from July 1, 2014, projects in India aspiring for LEED rating are advised to register with GBCI, that is Green Building Council of India. The Confederation of Indian Industry, that is CII, works to create and sustain an environment conducive to the development of India partnering industry, government, and civil society through advisory and consultative processes. India is now set to become a 5 trillion US dollar economy in the next 5 years, and Indian industry will remain the principal growth engine for achieving this target. CII will focus on 5 priority areas which would enable the country to stay on a solid growth track. These are employment generation, rural-urban connect, energy security, environmental sustainability, and governance. With 66 offices, including 10 centers of excellence in India and 11 overseas offices in Australia, China, Egypt, France, Germany, Indonesia, Singapore, South Africa, UAE, UK, and USA, as well as institutional partnerships with 355 counterpart organizations in 126 countries. CII serves as a reference point for Indian industry and the international business community. The green building movement in India was triggered off when CII Sorabji Godrej Green Business Center building in Hyderabad was awarded with the first and the most prestigious platinum rated green building rating in India. Since then, green building movement in India has gained tremendous impetus over the years. With a modest beginning of 20,000 square feet green built up area in the country during the year 2003, today more than 5,894 green building projects are coming up with a footprint of over 7.16 billion square feet are registered with the Indian Green Building Council, that is IGBC, out of which 1995 number of green building projects are certified and fully functional in India. This growth has been possible with the participation of all stakeholders in the green building movement. Today, all types of buildings are opting the green way. That means the government buildings, IT parks, offices, residentials, banks, airports, convention centers, institutions, hospitals, hotels, factories, townships, schools, metros, etc. Heating, ventilation and air conditioning system, that is the HVAC system, is an integral part of the modern day building technology. This system provides heating and cooling to the residential and commercial buildings. You can find HVAC systems anywhere from single family homes to submarines, where they provide the means for environmental comfort, becoming more and more popular in new construction technology. These systems use fresh air from outdoors to provide high indoor air quality. The V in HVAC system, or we call it the ventilation system, is the process of replacing or exchanging air within a space. This provides a better quality of air indoors and involves the removal of moisture, smoke, odors, heat, dust, airborne bacteria, carbon dioxide and other gases, as well as temperature control and oxygen replenishment. So how does an HVAC system work? The three main functions of an HVAC system are interrelated, especially when providing acceptable indoor air quality and thermal comfort. Your heating and air conditioning system is often one of the most complicated and extensive systems in your home, but when it stops working, you will know soon enough. There are 9 parts to your HVAC system that you should be familiar with, and those are air return, filter, exhaust outlets, ducts, electrical elements, outdoor unit, compressor, coils and blower. Another important building system is the acoustics. Acoustics is the study of physics of sound. Acoustics in buildings concerns about the controlling of quality and amount of sound inside a building. It is used to allow for pleasant sound in a concert hall and to reduce echoes and noise within an office building. Acoustics also concerns about the suppressing sound coming from outside the building, such as in apartments. Building acoustics are an important consideration in the design, operation and construction of most buildings and can have a significant impact on health and well-being, communication and productivity. They can be particularly significant in spaces such as concert halls, recording studios, lecture theatres, and so on, where the quality of sound and its intelligibility are very important. Building acoustics can be influenced by certain factors, and those factors are such as one number is the geometry and volume of a space. Number two is the sound absorption, transmission, and reflection characteristics of surfaces enclosing the space and within the space. Number three is the sound absorption, transmission, and reflection characteristics of materials separating the spaces. Number four is the generation of sound inside or outside the space. Number five is airborne sound transmission, and number six is impact noise. Basically, the acoustic systems in a building plays an important role for the proper functionality of a building. Another important aspect of building system is the lighting system. Generally, we use artificial lighting for this application, but artificial lighting uses a lot of energy in our homes and workplaces. In a typical home, lighting will account for about 10% of the total electricity use. In an office, it can be even 30% or more. In a lighting intensive retail environment, it could be more than 50%. For small commercial tenants who only pay for light and power, it could be as much as 70% of the total electricity costs. Inefficient lighting also gives off a lot of heat, increasing the energy needed for air conditioning. In order to avoid the complexity of the use of artificial lighting, the one and only solution is the use of right amount of light. Here, we have mentioned the recommended values of illumination, which are applicable for the different portions of the building. For corridors, walkways, the recommended use of illuminance should be around 40 lux. Whereas in the interiors, the lightings we use very intermittently, like change rooms, lever, storage areas, loading bays, stairs, and for that purpose, the recommended use of illuminance is around 80 lux. For staff canteens, entrance halls, etc., the recommended use of illuminance is around 160 lux. For continuously occupied areas with easy visual tasks of reading, writing, typing, for inquiry desks, for libraries, the recommended use of illuminance is around 240 lux. For routine office tasks of reading, writing, typing, inquiry desks, for libraries, the recommended use of illuminance is around 320 lux. For intensive works like the works on drawing boards, town planning, and inquiry counters dedicated to viewing paper plans, the recommended use of illuminance is around 600 lux. So we can see that proper use of lighting as required for various applications can actually save a lot of energy, and basically this is an important aspect for the concept of energy saving as applicable for a building in terms of its functionality. From the discussion we have done in this lecture, it is clear that the proper application of design, aesthetics, planning, lighting, acoustics are very much important for the proper function of a building. Thank you.